Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Midnight Texas. I say it like that because I was actually kind of shocked. I assumed because last season was 10 episodes, I assumed this was going to be 10 episodes too, but it's like, no, apparently this is the season finale. Which, to be fair, was a dope season finale. A lot of stuff went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love that Patience won, supposedly. She's changing the town's name to Patience. She's got everyone in Midnight treating her like a queen, and Theophilus as a king, and there's that whole weird thing of like brother, and it's so weird. It's just so weird that that's the whole thing about this, and it's just like they're kissing and everything. It's like not even my love. Every time she says something, it's brother, and it just makes it creepier and weird, dude. I can't stress that enough. But yeah, Patience, Texas, and literally having Bobo and Olivia move her carriage, and it's like their carriage, and like have people in Midnight kind of like tied up, having to stand on the sides like it's an actual parade. So there's that, and then there's the big reveal that I was right. It was Kai the entire time. Because I was like, how are you going to handle this? Like, did you really kill Manfred? Is he going to come back as a ghost or something like that? I didn't know. But I was like, it could easily be Kai. It made the most sense. And I was like, lo and behold, it turns out that is the case. I do like that moment of Manfred being like, I got you wrong. I was totally wrong about you. He's like, oh yeah, I know. And they kind of smile and laugh about it. But it is kind of sucky that it kind of had to play out this way. But it is interesting because it's like Manfred's body, him being the medium that he is, allows him to handle, like, obviously he's shown that he can take in a lot of like demonic and monster energy, so for him he's a perfect vessel. Kai wasn't, so it seemed like it took a while, but eventually it started breaking down to the point Theophilus was losing teeth. I guess even vampire blood wasn't enough to kind of take back what was happening, because it healed him for a little bit, but then he started falling apart. Then like his jaw was hanging off like that. It was like, ugh. That was pretty gross. I love that the fact is he tied it up so he could keep his jaw up and in place. Manfred was off with Walker, but for Manfred it's like, nah, I gotta do this. I gotta go back no matter what it is. The whole thing with Fiji I thought was kind of interesting, where Bo was like, so you didn't bring me over here to have sex? And she's like, no, even dark witches have to do Netflix and chill. And so he's trying to appeal to her, but it still didn't work. Joe got turned into a dark angel. I wonder how did she go about doing that? And I wonder, like, when it's all said and done, does he still have his wings or not? Or like the moment he kind of comes back, did his wings disappear or not? Because that was kind of interesting. It'd be kind of interesting if he was kind of stuck with the black wings permanently, but I probably doubt that. Like the moment the dark, her power is probably what gave him the wings in the first place. So probably without her power around it later on, it probably it can't happen. Oh, also, it answered my question too. Like, I was like, what about the whole monster energy thing? How do you? It's like, oh, you just like it all gets summoned up and it gets sucked into Theophilus. Because I was struggling to say that for whatever reason. Theophilus's head. So I was like, okay, so that's how you go about it. Because I was like, how you do that considering the fact that you cut off Manfred's head like that? But it's like, no, that answered it for me. So that's pretty cool. What really shocked me was the whole Basil situation, him showing up like that. It's like, hey, why don't you help us out? He's like, nah, why would I? I mean, he's like, even as powerful as I am, I'm not powerful enough to go up against the incest twins. I just love that you keep it real, right? So it's just funny that he refers to them as that. But what was interesting, though, is for him, it's like, Bobo convinced, I also love that, too. He's like, hey, was it Boo Boo? And he's like, Bobo. And he's like, yeah, like, that's much better. Like, that makes things any better, you saying it's actually Bobo, like, that's any more, almost like, yeah, like, that's not any more stupid. But for him, it's like, well, I can't create a soul, which is an interesting thing. Like, yeah, there's a set number of souls, like, even as a demigod. Maybe a god could, but not a demigod, could probably create a soul. But for him, it's like, I'd have to steal one. It'd be from someone you didn't know. But Addie kind of convinced Bobo not to do it, because, stealing someone else's soul and giving it to Fiji. But the thing is, like, if you don't do that, there's no other way to save Fiji, because Fiji's soul is gone forever. So I doubt it will have it. It's kind of interesting. I'm curious, like, once a soul bonds with you, does that mean that it just, like, I'm curious, like, will there ever be any differences in Fiji going forward, or is it just like her soul acclimates to who she is, or her new soul? So I'm curious about that. I also like that the butterflies do have different colors. I guess because we saw three. A witch, a Delilah witch lost theirs in the episode, and it was yellow. Fiji's was blue, and the one she ended up getting was like pink or something. So maybe that says something. Maybe everyone's soul is a different color. So that's kind of pretty neat if that is the case. Because every soul is different. No one soul is the same. So I'm curious how that whole situation works. We have Olivia being turned into a vampire, which I thought was kind of interesting. In all honesty, it never really crossed my mind to think that would happen. Like, until they kind of said something at the beginning, I was like, I would never have expected it, because she fought it so much of not becoming a vampire. But I guess, like, that was all leading up to the fact that eventually she would. Which I might have talked about this before. I think is kind of interesting in the grand scheme of things, because the actress who plays Olivia played Lexi in the Vampire Diaries, where she was also a vampire, so it kind of comes full circle in some regard, not just for Olivia's character, but also her character, like the actress who plays her as well. It's just kind of a funny thing how that whole situation played out like that. So now she's got to get accustomed to that, which is still pretty dope. I wonder, did she, like, I'm curious about her thoughts about it, because, like, she played a vampire before, now she was playing a human who's dating a vampire, now she's a vampire dating a vampire, like, how she felt about that. Does she find, like, the funniness in it as well or not? I would assume so, but maybe that's just me thinking like that. Once again, it's also an interesting thing that this episode also does, is, like, it shows Patience's personality. Like, she's like a villain, because, like, you compare her to, like, Kokonar, and it's just interesting. I mean, because even though she's this villainous person, she's still kind of like, how would I phrase it? She's one of those interesting villains who, like I said, they let you see her personality. Because for her, it's like, when Delilah gets released later on, she's like, you have got to be kidding me. It's like one thing after another. Theophilus is going through what he's going through right now, and now I gotta deal with her coming back. You kind of screwed up my plans, Manfred. The fact of the matter is, even if I can't perform the spell, I can still cut your head off and kill you for what you've done. She also talked about, like, Kai being a coward and everything. That's what set it off in my mind, being like, oh, that it definitely was Kai's binding moment. Fiji was like, oh yeah, I tried to track and spell, couldn't find him. It's like, the last time we heard, like, Manfred and him were like, no, like, if you get away, get some Delilahs. And it's like, we see the Delilah, which is getting captured and stuff like that. So I was like, wondering about that. So it's like, that's why, because Kai sacrificed himself like that. I also liked kind of playing into it too, like her personality and stuff like that with Patience. She was aiming for world domination. Isn't just going to stop with Midnight or Texas. She's going to go worldwide. I'm so curious what she would have done, what the world would have been like under her control. I guess she would have named everywhere after herself. Which is, I just think it's a funny thing, because it's like, at no point did her brother ever complain, like, oh, I thought this was kind of an us thing, and you're just naming places after you. It's just like, oh, come down, darling, don't worry about that type of stuff. Come on, it's just, it's just a funny thing to me, just consider the personalities and stuff like that. So, even the whole thing of Theophilus being like, no, I'm okay, I'm feeling so much better now. She's like, oh, okay, good, dear. And then he came out with the jaw messed up thing, and I was like, oh, that's super messed up. I also love that Delilah and Patience were kind of going back and forth with each other. She's like, you literally had me trapped in hell. And, like, to me, it's funny to me, because it's like, not only is that your motivation, because it's like you're pissed, not because, like, oh, she's evil, she needs to be stopped. It's more so like, you trapped me in that damn painting for 800 years. I had to eat possum and run for my life for 800 years. And she's like, you've been through hell. What about me? Do you imagine how hard it is to get ahead through TSA? It's like, this is a conversation we're having back and forth like that. I thought that was kind of so funny. I was actually kind of shocked about the whole Patience, like the powers bleeding out from Theophilus's head into the pool, and her diving in and absorbing them. I was like, yo, how are you going to fight that? And it's like, oh, with Kai's help, Manfred is able to absorb all the powers and spew them into a fire, and it got burned away. That was pretty dope, how that ended up happening. And then Patience ends up getting trapped in the painting herself. And I love that the painting has Theophilus's head as well, so I guess, like, that got sucked up as well with everything. So I guess that's just going to be one of those other things that stay in Midnight, because I love how they do it later on. They show, like, I guess kind of showing their victories, because it's like, oh yeah, like, the painting Joe had representing the whole Kokonar situation in Midnight, and that was like the painting of like, you know, patience and stuff like that. Be like, yeah, let's put it up here, murals to our victory as a town. I also love that, like, because later on, like, he was like, man, literally we're just enslaved by dark witches, and everyone in Midnight is just acting like it's nothing, and it's like, oh yeah, because I used the amnesia spell on him. I was like, oh, okay. I thought that was so interesting, because to me, I was like, oh yeah, because it's Midnight, they're used to the weird and crazy, so they bounce back like that. It's like, no, it helps the fact that Fiji uses an amnesia spell, so that's interesting. Because that's the thing, like, people in Midnight know things are weird, but it still was never really answered how much people in Midnight know. Because, I mean, it seemed like our main characters are the only, like, supernatural people. Because I'm wondering, is it like a Haven situation where it's like, oh yeah, everyone potentially running around Haven had troubles. But, you know, we only got to see some of them over the course of the series. But it's like, is that the same thing? Where it's like, a lot of people in the town are supernatural. Or at the very least, they're running from something. Or at the very least, that this weird place has been a home. You know, it's just one of those things I'm curious if they'd ever tackle. Or it's just kind of like, yeah, everyone else in the town is regular people, but they do know the truth. Because even like... Because I think even Creek didn't know the truth about everyone necessarily. Maybe she did. Because her and her family kind of knew the truth. Well, Connor kind of didn't know the truth about everyone being what they were, the whole supernatural thing, until the vampires came to town last season. So there's that whole situation. So it's hard to really say 100% of like how... Because Creek's pretty smart, so she kind of figured everything out. So I think that's kind of what that gets chalked up to. What's also sad, too, is that Addie ended up dying. That was kind of a shame. Especially because, like, she had that badass moment of, like, Fiji being, like, be gone, and then she grabbed the spell and threw it at those witches. Be gone makes me wonder, like, is that, like, a teleportation spell? It's most likely a death spell. I was assuming so, but I was like, oh, it could have easily been a teleportation spell, too, but I'm sure it was more so a death spell. So, but it's kind of a shame, because even Joe kind of feels, you know, bad about it, because for him it's like, oh, yeah, I killed an innocent person, and it's like, it's kind of one of the cardinal rules of being an angel. What's also interesting and sad too is Chewie's ashes were used to kind of keep Joe under Patience's control at first, to kind of keep him drugged up and everything. It was like, that's heartbreaking. She's like, now you don't have to worry about doing anything with Chewie's remains. Because that's what I was wondering. I was like, well, the only demon we know about is... I was like, oh, that sucks, dude. That sucks big time. Not only did you kill the man that you loved, his ashes were used to kind of keep you drugged up to that super morbid and messed up. But in a sad way, it also leaves the path open for potentially Walker and Joe. It's hard to say because Joe's leaving for now. I'm sure he would come back eventually, but it's that thing of like, what would God put him through to make up for the fact is of what he did? Because for him, it's like, it's not my choice what I have to do to be back in God's graces for that. I mean... Because he also kind of, well, I guess because even though he was on Earth and everything, he hadn't necessarily turned his back on God and stuff like that. So he was always still kind of one of God's angels. But him doing what he did, killing Addie, probably tipped the scales even more. Because it seems more so like it's just they're setting up Walker to be a new resident in Midnight. Which is interesting considering he knows so much about the supernatural. At the very least, demons. But it seems like he has a grip on all things supernatural as well. So I'm sure he's going to be a big and nice asset to have to... Midnight, especially considering he helped save the day and everything, you know? Then there's the whole Fiji and Bobo situation. She's pregnant, and the moment you find out, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then I was like, wait a minute. And then Bobo got the realization after I did. I was like, I was kind of wondering whether or not they make it so that Bobo realizes it but the moment Fiji was like, oh, a soul I've never met before, and it hit him. It's like the deal he made with Basil could potentially involve their child. And him being a trickster, which Addie was like, don't trust him, he's a trickster. It's like, that seems like the dickish thing that he would do because he is a dick. So that's super messed up. Like, that means when a child comes out, that might be an issue. I'm curious, will he tell her the truth? Because it's a whole thing, because it's actually kind of a funny thing. Like, going back to it is when Fiji was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't look at you guys after everything I did. Manfred's like, it's okay, you know, no good deed and all that. You know, Bobo tried to save you and you turned into a huge dick. It's like, hey, we've all been there. It's like, yeah, so we've all kind of had our issues and stuff like that. So it's okay. We could get to the apologizing and stuff later, but now it's like, is Bobo going to tell Fiji the truth about what was sacrificed? Because even under those circumstances, it was to save the town, it was to save Fiji, sure, but it might have cost them their child's soul. So will she be as forgiving? because it would come back to haunt him. Because I was wondering, like, is it going to be someone they never met in the regard of, like, oh man, like, that person's going to find their way to midnight and start doing some terrible stuff and it's all going to be Bobo's fault? Maybe that argument could be made for their child ends up doing some terrible stuff, ends up going down the path of patience, or ends up being as evil as Fiji was without her soul. So there's that. But I'm also curious, how much do the others know? Because Basil did his thing while time was frozen for the others. So did Bobo explain, like, oh, Fiji got her soul back? Or, like, even the fact is he had to sacrifice another. So, like, how much do the others know? Because it seems like Fiji doesn't know because she says that. So she probably doesn't know about the price that Bobo paid. Addie did, but probably no one else did, I'm assuming. I don't know, maybe the others did. Maybe Fiji might be the only one who doesn't know, but, like, none of them know that the price potentially was their child's soul, but we'll see in the long run. It's interesting, too, because about the whole Lemuel and Olivia situation, too, because it's like, for the first time in her life, she actually has no regrets. Like, the thought of eternity, I think it's also because she dealt with her family issues, like, after dealing with her dad and everything, and now being here. It's interesting, too, because considering who Olivia is, I'm curious to see, like, because usually when you're a vampire, it usually amplifies who you already were. And Olivia kind of had her issues, but to be fair, once again, she dealt with a lot of that stuff. Doesn't mean, like, a lot of her personality won't get amplified with her being a vampire and stuff like that. I mean, because I think it would probably involve, like, Manfred having to do a thing where he makes Olivia like Lem, because Lem is the only one of his kind, but it would be interesting potentially if they ever did that and made Olivia like him as well. There was a part of me that was wondering, do you think they'll hook Delilah and potentially Manfred together? To be fair, like, his love life has not worked out. It's like, things with Creek. Creek ended up getting murdered. Things with Patience. Patience ended up being a very, very evil person. So it's like, Manfred's love life hasn't always worked out the best. So I was wondering if potentially they're going to do that, if she was going to kick it, but it's like, nah, she's going out there helping find the lost butterflies to all those other witches, the other Delilah witches, which, to be fair, at least the one we saw was destroyed, but I'm sure maybe there's some other ones out there. Maybe Delilah can pull them back to the good side. I don't know. And what does that say for all the other Theophilus witches out there? Because I doubt all of them came to midnight and died. Maybe they did, but maybe not. I kind of get the feeling like that was only some of them, so maybe we'll see some remnants of that in the future. Maybe not. And then finally, there's a whole situation with Manfred, because Zelda's crossed back over this time, and she's real, and she's like, yeah, man, he got some issues. And we see that night thing from the painting, so it's like, it got out, along with whatever else was in that painting, which means potentially, I feel like we could potentially see Delilah returning in that regard as well, because she might have answers on how to deal with everything that came out of that painting, potentially. So, I don't think it's the only thing that... Well, because that thing never stayed dead either. It always came back, so I think that speaks volumes in itself. But it's like, is that something that has always existed? Like, is this thing older than even Delilah, Theophilus, and Patience, or Hypatia? Is it older than them, or was it something created specifically from her? Like, that painting, that prison, like, how long has that existed? Is that something, like, that's what the thing, like, did Patience make it? Or was it something already old and ancient and already in existence? That's the big question. So, sadly, I just looked it up, and it seems that Midnight Texas will not be returning for a third season, at the very least on NBC. So, I'm always got my fingers crossed with these type of situations that hopefully maybe someone else will pick it up, whether it be like a Netflix would. But at that point, it's like, I don't know. Like, you hope for stuff like that, maybe a Netflix, a Hulu, somebody at some point picks up the series. I hope, because I'd love to see this continue. You know, as someone who's never read the books that this series is based on and everything, I'd be very interested to see, especially where things kind of ended off, where we go forward from here, you know? So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.